Hello everyone, and welcome back to StoryCraft. My name is Miss Rebecca, and today we will be reading a story and doing a craft. Today's story is called The Story of Ferdinand by Munro Leaf, drawings by Robert Lawson. This book is about a bull who is a little different from the other bulls, and you'll find out how. So let's get right into it. Is the story of Ferdinand. Once upon a time in Spain, there was a little bull, and his name was Ferdinand. All the other little bulls he lived with would run and jump and butt their heads together. But not Ferdinand. He liked to sit just quietly and smell the flowers. He had a favorite spot out in the pasture under the cork tree. It was his favorite tree, and he would sit in its shade all day and smell the flowers. Sometimes his mother, who was a cow, would worry about him. She was afraid he would be lonesome all by himself. "Why don't you run and play with the other little bulls and skip and butt your head?" she would say. But Ferdinand would shake his head. "I like it better here, where I can sit just quietly and smell the flowers." His mother saw that he was not lonesome, and because she was an understanding mother, even though she was a cow, she let him just sit there and be happy. As the years went by, Ferdinand grew and grew until he was very big and strong. All the other bulls who had grown up with him in the same pasture would fight each other all day. They would butt each other and stick each other with their horns. What they wanted most of all was to be picked to fight at the bullfights in Madrid. But not Ferdinand. He still liked to sit just quietly under the cork tree and smell the flowers. One day, 5 men came in very funny hats to pick the biggest, fastest, roughest bull to fight in the bullfights in Madrid. All the other bulls ran around snorting and butting, leaping and jumping, so the men would think that they were very, very strong and fierce and pick them. Ferdinand knew that they wouldn't pick him, and he didn't care, so he went out to his favorite cork tree to sit down. He didn't look where he was sitting, and instead of sitting on the nice cool grass in the shade, he sat on a bumblebee. Well, if you were a bumblebee and a bull sat on you, what would you do? You would sting him, and that is just what this bee did to Ferdinand. Yeah, ouch. Wow, did it hurt! Ferdinand jumped up with a snort. He ran around puffing and snorting, butting and pawing the ground as if he were crazy. The 5 men saw him and they all shouted with joy. Here was the largest and fiercest bull of all, just the one for the bullfights in Madrid. Oh man, what's Ferdinand gonna do? So they took him away for the bullfight day in a cart. What a day it was! Flags were flying, bands were playing, and all the lovely ladies had flowers in their hair. They had a parade into the bull ring. First came the banderilleros with long, sharp pins with ribbons on them to stick in the bull and make him mad. Ow. Next came the picadores, who rode skinny horses, and they had long spears to stick in the bull and make him madder. Double ouch, huh? Then came the matador, the proudest of all. He thought he was very handsome and bowed to the ladies. He had a red cape and a sword and was supposed to stick the bowl last of all. Then came the bull, and you know who that was, don't you? Ferdinand. They called him Ferdinand the Fierce, and all the banderilleros were afraid of him, and the picadores were afraid of him, and the matador was scared stiff. Ferdinand ran to the middle of the ring, and everyone shouted and clapped because they thought he was going to fight fiercely and butt and snort and stick his horns around. But not Ferdinand. When he got to the middle of the ring, he saw the flowers in all the lovely ladies' hair, and he just sat down quietly and smelled. He wouldn't fight and be fierce no matter what they did. He just sat and smelled. And the banderilleros were mad, and the picadores were madder, and the matador was so mad he cried because he couldn't show off with his cape and sword. So they had to take Ferdinand home. And for all I know, he is still sitting there under his favorite cork tree, smelling the flowers just quietly. He is very happy. The end. And that was the story of Ferdinand.
And welcome to the craft part of today's StoryCraft. So because Ferdinand loves flowers so much, I thought we would make some flowers today. These flowers are super simple to make and really only require one material. All you really need is a piece of paper, and I happen to have a yellow piece of construction paper here, but you could totally just color a piece of your printer paper yellow or orange or whatever color you want to make the inside of the flower, and that would be totally fine. Other things you need are just some scissors and a stapler. And of course, if you need a grown-up to help you with this, please ask. But first, we're going to start off by cutting our piece of printer paper into strips. And I'm really just eyeballing it here. I didn't measure anything. These can be as thick or as thin as you want them to be. They could be of varying thicknesses. Really just cut that paper into strips. Once you're done that, we are going to make the petals of our flower. So you just want to start by putting them together like this. So you just cross them in the center, make sure they all meet in the center, and it's almost like you're making an asterisk or a star. You just kind of keep adding and adding until you like how many you have. So probably one flower will take about half of your strips. I think that's probably enough like that. So, because you don't want it to be too dense, because then your flower becomes a little less of a flower. You want to be able to see each of the petals. And so now all I'm doing is I'm taking each strip of the paper and I'm curling them into the center and just holding them down with one of my fingers. And I'm just doing this randomly because I don't want it to look too uniform. You just want them to be able to pop out really nicely. So I'm just picking them randomly from around the circle here. I've got them all curled into the center. Now comes the tricky part. Now you want to hold down the center. And so you could do this in a couple different ways. You could do this with glue, but I chose to do it with a stapler. So I'm gonna be really careful. I'm gonna find a nice corner to go in on, and just kind of wiggle until I can get my stapler into the center. And of course, if you need help with getting the staple in, please feel free to ask your grown-up again for help with this. Really gently, I got it in there, and give it one staple right through all the pieces of paper. And that holds it together perfectly. So now you want to add the center of your flower. So I happen to have this construction paper. So I'm going to use my scissors and just cut out a circle. And again, I'm just going to eyeball this. It doesn't have to be perfect. You can kind of make it as big or as small as you want it to be. Just it needs to fit in the center. And I did forget, you actually need one more material for this. I used tape, but you could totally use anything you want if you wanted to staple it again, or if you wanted to glue it down, especially if you used glue already instead of a staple to hold the petals into place. You could totally use glue here as well, but I just thought tape seemed really easy. So I'm just curling a piece of tape over and sticking the center of my flower down. And that's it. You have your flower now. And now go ahead and enjoy your flowers just like Ferdinand enjoys his flowers. I hope you enjoyed today's StoryCraft, and we'll see you next week. Bye-bye.